Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about how to help your employees become more resilient. And joining us to contribute to the conversation is Michelle Phillips. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me, Jenna.
Can you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, hi. I have been I bring soul to the workplace. I have been doing corporate training and coaching. Oh my gosh, over 20 years. I was doing coaching before it was even, a thing. But I really have, I love working with people and helping them understand that they have so much more power than they think.
Mm.
Every, Everybody always has more power than they think. So I go into organizations and I have a three-prong approach. It's, offering some training workshops and then giving individual coaching to those who need it and who are open to it, right? Not everyone is in that category. And then looking at the results, are the employees making a difference? Are they doing things differently? And I don't have any quick fixes. I say, this is about, working on yourself, growing yourself, and being open to getting better. But I've had such good results over the years. I really enjoy it. And I always say you can't put what I do in a box because I have a lot of science and research behind me, but I also have a lot of metaphysics, and I have this out of the box. I don't know if I always say, if you've ever seen The King's Speech, the movie, the gentleman who trains him to actually stop stuttering was this out of the box coach. That's how I describe myself.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm really excited to talk about resilience because I feel like it's becoming, I think, a challenge pretty much globally across. Maybe we've mentioned it in a few of our podcasts with some of the newer generations coming in, that maybe the resilience isn't quite as strong as a trait as maybe some of the baby boomers or older generations who had, suffered through a lot of hard times. And so I'm really curious around, whether or not you see those trends or what trends you even see around resilience to kind of kick us off.
Yeah, there's always trends and there's always headlines, and a lot of them I call them, they're bait headlines.
Mm.
So the headlines are telling us, these things, right? I just did a big presentation on generations at work. And the research is so interesting because what they're finding is, even though the generations might want different things based on, we're all a product of where the time we grew up. So this generation might want to be paid to commute because they started working from home, during
Mhm.
COVID. And now they have to drive someplace, where older generations didn't cross their mind. But what they're finding is the differences don't really have to divide us, but a lot of the headlines, we're always being told, this generation wants this and this generation wants that. So the headlines are almost dividing us. But when they did studies, there's a Harvard article I quote a lot, and I can't remember. It's like 200,000 studies or people studied. The differences were so small. So the question remains, what are we focusing on? Because in every generation, there are resilient people. And, now the term anti-fragile, we're using that in, out of that research based on, when you go through something like we did with COVID, you actually get stronger because you go, wow, if I could get through that, what else can I get through? So,
Mhm.
yes, there's people that are suffering in every generation and people that are thriving. The good news, I believe, is there's so much information out there, and there's coping tools, and there's things that are learnable that can help people. So again, each person has to want to go down that path.
Hmm. And what are some of the tips you give them for people who maybe want to be more resilient? Or maybe actually even a better question to lead with would be, how does somebody realize that maybe they aren't as resilient as maybe they should be?
Yeah, good question, Jana. I have my clients a couple times a day. I say, set your phone to go off. And when the phone goes off, I want you to ask yourself two questions. How am I feeling? And am I happy with my results? Right? We spend so much of our time, especially in the Western world, living from the neck up. We've been taught to be very logical and think things through and make pros and cons. And I really want my clients to connect their head to their heart. So as we're rushing through our day, or we're doing our whatever we have to be doing, I want them to stop and say, how am I feeling? Am I feeling energized? Am I feeling that I'm happy with my results? And if they're not, I want them to go take a pause and say, what have I been doing? Right? What have I been doing the last half an hour? Where I've been focusing my energy? Maybe they've just been, their mind has been focused on something in the past, or they're worried about something in the future. So again, when people take the pause and you start to make a connection, usually to the way you're feeling, is if nothing is happening in the actual moment, right? If something's really happening, oh, I'm feeling horrible. I just had a fender bender. Okay, that's reasonable. But if you're feeling horrible and you're sitting at your desk on a sunny day and nothing's actually happening, I want people to back up and connect it to what they've been thinking, what they've been focused on. And then I teach people how to readjust. There's a great quote from the Midnight Library: the prison isn't the place, it's the perspective. So the way we think is a habit, and making new neurological pathways is possible. So to me, the science and the research behind positive psychology and, rewiring our brains is very exciting.
Well, I'd be curious then for maybe a little specific example. So today I actually paused and asked myself, kind of ironically, what you just said, and I was feeling unmotivated. Was the feeling I was feeling. And if I were to ask myself, were I happy with my results? So like in the past half an hour, I would have said definitely not. So then what would have been kind of the next step there?
Yeah. The biggest thing I tell people is to take the break, right? Because thoughts are your thoughts are electromagnetic units of energy. And every thought is information and energy, but it collects another like thought and then another like thought. So that's how we get going down the trail of doom and gloom, or the trail of me. We don't even realize it. Our brains run away. So I always tell my clients, when your brain runs away, you don't have to go with it. So if you catch it early and you realize I'm unmotivating, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling boring, whatever the feeling is. The question is, I go back to Katie Byron's famous 4 questions. Is it true? Am I an unmotivated person? Am I a boring person? No, this is something that's happening right now. It's an event. It's not who I am. So it's taking that break. And sometimes for me, it's picking up a nonfiction book. It's going outside in nature, meditation, a nap. Whenever you take a nap, take a walk, read something that makes you laugh, you stop the chain of all those negative thoughts and you break the cycle, and you feel a release in your body, and you get a do-over. You get to start again. But most people don't give themselves that 5-minute break. They just keep digging in and going harder and being hard on themselves instead of walking away. Right? It's like when you feel your fight and flight go on, I say, get up from your desk and just go outside for 2 minutes. And you'll feel a shift in your energy. I call it my new book is called Energy. I keep changing the title, Energy Rules, but it's about shifting your energy, and that which shifts your perspective, which helps you make better decisions. And if you're having one day where you're not motivated, big whoop. If it's 2 days a week, then there's maybe we look at it, but let yourself off.
It's been 2 days, so it must be serious.
Watch 2 funny movies and call me in the morning.
Yeah. So I like that prescription. So when you think about resilience, how much is perspective tied to resilience?
Yeah, I think, oh my gosh, it's almost, I don't know the actual number. I'm making this up. So it's over 80%, right? I would guess. I mean, there are people with, serious neurological or, things that need medication. There are people that actually, are clinically depressed. But for the majority of people, I think, we don't realize that our thoughts are what's creating how we're feeling and how we're thinking. And that's why I want people to make the connection. Because the minute you make the connection, because if I said to you, Jana, tell me about the best day of your life. And you started telling me a story about the best day of your life, we would both feel lifted and elevated. But Jana, tell me the worst day of your life. Within 5 minutes, we would feel our energy go down. So it's, again, I call it fake fear. It's, if no one's bleeding and nothing is specifically happening that's horrible right now, it's our mind, right, going down that road. And we also live in a society that wants us to I always say, be in spring and summer all the time, right? Always be producing and always be putting out posts and podcasts and achieving. And yet I live in New York and it's fall. The leaves are falling off the trees. It's going to get cold. Winter's coming. Humans need to slow down. And nobody
Mm.
likes to hear me say that, but it's the best thing you could do for yourself. And then you come, there's only so many days you could sit on the couch with a clicker in your hand if you're not clinically depressed. And then you're like, I want to get up, I want to do something, right? So let yourself have some time and then set small goals. And again, learning to give yourself credit for every little thing versus beating yourself up for the one thing you didn't do.
Mm. Well, but I guess a lot of people they get stressed out, or they, maybe even go so far as we could use the word feel triggered, or whatever the case may be. How do you help people frame how big of a deal this is, or like how you help them frame what's going on so that maybe they can realize this isn't such a big deal, even though it feels like it is at the moment.
And it really does feel that way. So I don't want to pretend like, when we get our fight and flight in traffic, I could be in traffic and I might want to scream, right? It's real. The feelings are real. But the biggest thing I want people to say is to step away from them and say, is something happening to me right now? And if something's not happening to me right now, where is this thought coming from? And say your question again. I went off a trail and I forgot.
How do you help them frame the situation so they can have a good perspective? Because some things actually do matter and are significant, and some things in a half an hour or an hour really won't be a big deal. So how do you frame that?
Yes, I lost my train when I started going down that road. To me, it's helping them soften. It's the words they're using. Right? We use very like everybody's, doing this, or this is never going to happen. During COVID, my clients would say to me, everybody's dying. I'm like, no, everyone's not dying. Yes, a lot of people are. And God, rest everybody, I'm not here to make small of anything, but everybody, it's these sweeping, we dramatize things. So I'm really about also with my clients, I'm like, if you are willing to drop the drama, I'm willing to work with you, right? Because some people just love the drama. They love running at, 90 miles an hour and having too much to do and talking about how busy they are. And those are not the people I want to work with. I want to work with people who say, oh my gosh, there's got to be another way. And that's when I teach them, when you are mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally aligned, you're in flow, right? Ideas are coming, you're creative, you're getting things done, you're writing your novel, you're getting your ABC report done. But a lot of times we try to put sweat equity behind it, and that's like just muscling through things versus taking the time to get into that flow state and then get to work, right? And that's what I want to teach people. You could be in that flow state, you can get there almost every morning if you do certain things in the morning. It might not last all day because the world kind of knocks us around. But when you realize you're the one that's getting into the flow state, you're the one that is mentally thinking, physically doing something, right? Is connecting to something greater than you, and, mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional, right? Talking to yourself as you would a friend. Your first relationship is with yourself. You start to see things differently. And then people build resilience. It's mental muscle, right? You're just making new neural pathways. And again, I always tell my clients, it doesn't last, unfortunately. It's like if you had a headache, you take an aspirin, right? So if you took an aspirin in so many hours, the effects wear off. So you need another dose. So in the morning, when you either do your meditation or you read something that inspires, motivates, educates you, gets you into the zone, a good playlist, a workout, then you drive to work, and then, everything hits the fan, right? And you're off in the weeds again. So it's like, okay, you need another dose of medicine because it already wore off. So listening to a podcast such as yours, finding something that makes you laugh, doing something that, again, stops a train of thought, and then consciously pick up in a new place.
So what about how do you start your day then?
Yeah. So, every morning it almost starts before I go to sleep at night. It's right. Saying gratitude, asking for good dreams, right? And I'm a great sleeper because I believe that you get what you think. And I believe I'm a great sleeper. And I tell myself I'm a great sleeper, and it doesn't work every night, but most nights I get a very good night's sleep. So you wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. go for your gratitude. I go through my gratitude list in my head, but then I meditate right off the bat, right? Again, meditation is getting you out of the world. Again, we spend so much time in the world with our senses and all the information that's coming at us. 10 minutes of meditation gets us out of as soon as you close your eyes, you lose some sensory information. And then your heartbeat slows down. And then you start your day. And then I always read something that inspires, motivates, or educates me. I journal, I color sometimes. Like, I don't do this every morning, but it gets me so high, like literally like a physical great feeling, that I love to do it on as many days a week as I can.
So you've mentioned feelings a lot, and this, I don't know, I'll see if I can get this question to come out right. But there's this weird, I guess, cyclical relationship with feelings, and that I like feelings aren't necessarily truth, but it's truly how you feel. Meaning, like, there a lot of times that people say, like marriage counselors might say, you may not feel like you're in love anymore, but if you start acting and doing these behaviors, your feelings will follow. Or you're saying, like, that you need to stop and do things to adjust your feelings. So what do we do with these feelings? How do we interpret them?
Such a good question, Jana. So I'm sorry, I just text my husband if you heard that, because I can hear him in the other room telling me. It's 6 o'clock or whatever, after 6 here in New York. So feelings, what happens with feelings is, let's say we have I call it the mood spectrum, right? At the top of the mood spectrum is joy, ecstasy, love, the best feeling you could ever have. The bottom of the mood spectrum is depression, fear, anxiety, grief, right? And then there's so many emotions in between those. But what happens is, when we're feeling yucky, when we're not feeling good, we want to jump from feeling horrible to feeling great. Mm-hmm. And what I teach people is what I call the ladder up technique. Just like rungs on a ladder, I can't go from feeling angry or jealous to feeling joyful. But I can go so say, I always use the example, say I come home and my neighbor just bought a boat, and I go, oh, can't believe he got a boat. I want a boat. And I start feeling yucky, right? So those feelings are real. And I feel angry, I feel jealous, and I don't want to stay there, but I say, okay, so I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling jealous. Really, I'm feeling disappointed because maybe I want a boat, right? So I identify the emotion. The shamans have a saying, name it to tame it. Right. So it's not just good or bad. It's what is exactly the emotion. So I'm not really, I'm a little jealous and maybe angry, but am I really angry at my neighbor? No, I'm kind of disappointed because I want a boat. So then I get to disappointment. Still not where I want to be, but it's better than jealousy and anger. It's a little up the, and then I go from disappointment to frustration. Oh, I've been working so hard. I would really like a vacation. And then from frustration, I could get to, you know what? I've had a really good summer, and so I don't have a boat. If I really want a boat, can I get a boat? Yeah. And I move to hope, right? So it's moving yourself up the emotions little bit at a time and softening, just like we said before. When you're hard on yourself, it's like, oh, I'm being so unmotivated. Well, no, maybe I need a break, right? So I'm being unmotivated is like beating yourself up, but saying, I need a break. I'm taking a break. I've been working really hard. That feels better in your body. So you start to feel the release. So that's what I really want to get people in touch with. So people say, think before you speak. I say, think and feel. Because when you start to feel the emotions and name the emotions and realize that your thinking is helping you up this ladder, again, you still might not have a boat, but you feel better.
Well, so let's shift focus a little bit and now maybe come at the more from a view of companies and leaders. How can leaders help their employees with resilience? What are some of the things they can do to either bring awareness or even adjust their maybe response to things to kind of help that?
Yeah, it's really important. And I always say I work with leaders that want to be leaders, right? And that's a big difference. I listened to your podcast the other day with Paul. I can't remember his last name, but you talked about how often people are promoted to leadership roles and they don't want to develop people, right? They just, they have so many tasks. So leaders that really want to develop the people are the ones I thrive with. And they're the ones that see the importance of teaching their employees coping skills, getting them outside coaching, right? Helping them be resilient. I do change management training, whether it's change management training or, my happiness is a habit training. I have a client asking me to come in and do that in December because they just merged with another company. And he said,
Mhm.
remember that class we did a year or so ago for the employees that was teaching them that they had took responsibility over how they felt and their actions? Let's do it again, because with this merger, things are shaking up and I've got some new employees. So it's leaders that really want to give their people the tools and help them realize that, again, it's part of the company's responsibility, but it's also the employee's responsibility, right? So if you want your business to grow 30%, you have to grow your people 30%, right? So are you developing them? And years ago, I got to see Colin Powell speak with only 50 people in a room. It was such a special occasion at Radio City Music Hall. We were in a separate room, and somebody asked him the age old question, are leaders made or born? And he said, I was born wanting to help people, but the Army gave me training. So the best leaders give the training. The best leaders partner with me because it's not a one and done. Oh, come do this class and everybody, is transformed. It's like, come give a training every month. Come give one-on-one coaching to the people who really need it. Let's give these employees all the tools they need to grow, expand, and be better. Now, again, the employee then has to do something with that. But the best leaders are the ones that realize, especially after COVID, that it's not gone are the days of, just shut up and go do your job and leave your feelings in the car. Helping people with their lives is just as important. And if you ask most people, what are you going to do when you retire? And they think, oh, maybe I'll volunteer and I'll help people in, another country. And I say to them, help the people you're working with right now, right? You've
Mhm.
got this staff of people. You have such an influence over these people, right? How you treat them is how they treat their coworkers, how they treat their spouse, how they treat the dog, kind of thing, right? So really knowing that this is a gift you are given. You have people's lives in your hand, and what can you do to inspire, motivate, educate them by way of your example, by way of your coaching, by way of giving them the right resources?
You mentioned that employees have a responsibility for their own emotions and how they show up, and I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that recently, maybe in the past 5 to 10 years. I feel like I see a lot more instances of this victim mentality. How do leaders help that? Like, how do you mentioned the training. So how do leaders train? Like, I get that you're upset, or I get you're this, but you really have control over this type thing.
Yeah, I learned this simple formula which changed my life. And it's just basically the Serenity Prayer, or Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup for the Soul author. I took a training course with him in 1997, and he taught a very simple formula called E plus R equals O. He said, everything in your life is an event, and events aren't good or bad, right? They're just happening. It's raining. Rain isn't a bad event. It's just water is falling from the sky, but we label it bad. Then your reaction gives you your outcome. So whenever you don't like your outcome, the event, if it's raining, that's a fact, right?
Mhm.
If I'm stomping my feet because it's raining, or because I just got, I didn't get invited to the meeting, or I wasn't on the list for the new project, right? It's what's my response, and teaching people that they have 100% control over their response. If you put a gun to my head, which is a very extreme example, I still have a choice, right? I probably wouldn't want to move if that happened. But again, realizing that you always have more power than you think. And when employees really stop waiting for someone to come motivate them or lead them, it goes both ways. Like, hopefully you have a good leader, but you take your career into your own hands. You learn the skills that you need. And I always say it's keeping you employable, right? If I'm always learning, if I'm an employee and I'm always taking a class, working on myself, doing something, then if something happens, I'm employable. Right. It's
Mhm.
not like I've been sitting around biding my time, not increasing my skills. And now if I get laid off or there's a merger, then I'm, oh my gosh, now I'm out of work.
Well, let's
Versus,
maybe bring, yeah, a few of those ideas together because you mentioned, yeah, employable or being out of work. So, how, and there's a lot of predictions right now that the economy is going to continue to struggle, and if that's the case, then inevitably it'll impact employment. And so people are probably actually really scared. Some people, sorry, are probably really scared about their future employment. Um, which is a very real thing, that I mean, that you're dependent on your paycheck, et cetera. So how do you help, kind of with that fear and having that perspective of, acknowledging that event will still be bad, but maybe what are your options for your response ahead of time, and be thinking about that ahead of time?
yeah, it's, what we just said, keeping your skills up to date and learning new things. And whenever you're learning, you're excited. So keep taking classes on things that are, lighting you up and getting you excited. So you feel that you're at the top of your game. Keep your network alive. I see a lot of times in corporations mainly, right? I have a cushy job in a big corporation, so I'm not going to really network. And then, when then they need the network, right? So using your network when you don't need it. And then realizing I always, when COVID, or I don't even like to call it that, when the lockdown, whatever it was, sacred isolation, I call it sometimes, happened, I think it really put us in a microscope over all of us because we really aren't in control ever.
Mm.
Right. The only thing I control is my reaction, my response, what I wear. I control me. And it's always been that way. So again, if I always say, put your energy on things you can control. I can control keeping my resume up to date. I can control keeping my network, alive and talking to people. I can control that my skills are up. Right. And then the worrying about something that we don't know is wasted energy. Right. So it's, again, it sounds so easy to say. I know it's so easy to sit here and spout these things and harder to live sometimes, especially if you're the one that's worried about your position or your family. But even, looking, I've been around a long time, and almost every colleague of mine has got downsized, restructured, laid off, and they're all fine, right?
Mhm.
They might have gone through a hard period, but they all figured it out. So I think that maybe the younger generation hasn't experienced that yet, but if you've been in corporations a long time, I've seen the shuffle over and over. And a lot of times these people get better positions or they're happier or that's how I got my position. I was downsized many years ago, and I found a whole new career. So it's really, where are you putting your focus? What do you control?
Do you see that how, I mean, I guess the mantra would be you get more what you focus on, and where I'm going with it is like I feel like there's some people who, you see their feed say on Facebook or something, and it's like, oh, this terrible thing happened to me, and this terrible thing happened to me, and this terrible thing happened to me. So do you think that there's some sort of like, more terrible things happen to you if that's what you're focused on, whether maybe it's because you're labeling terrible, because that maybe something if it happened in isolation, maybe you wouldn't have thought it was a big deal, but you've been thinking all along that all these terrible things are happening, and so now that becomes terrible. I don't know, have you
No,
seen
I
that, like, with
do.
people?
Yeah, it becomes your lens, right? The
Mm.
old saying, you get what you're looking for, right? Think of us, I always say, if I took a magnifying glass out on a sunny day and some leaves, I could take the power of the sun and focus it till a fire, right? That focus is strong. So when you're focused on everything going wrong, you see more going wrong. I give all my clients an easy button from Staples, and I want them to amplify the ease of their life because I don't know, we've become so sarcastic and we huff and puff. Oh, poor me. And I'm like, oh my God, you're driving a nice car, you work at a nice place, you're wearing nice clothes, right? So this poor me mentality where if you amplify what's going right. So when I first started this game, I brought it home to my husband and he laughed at me, and we put the Staples button in the kitchen and we would make dinner and I'd hit the button. That was easy. And then we'd wash dishes. That was easy. And you realize there's so many things that are going right. So he took the button to work, and he worked in a factory at the time, and somebody came in, oh, the machine's broken and we had the parts are broken. And he went, take a minute. Here's the website. Go on the website and order the new part. And as the guy's walking out of the office, he hits the button. That was easy, right? So again, these things that we get our hair on fire, we get all crazy about, if we just really break it down, unless something is really horrible happening in the moment, even again, if something really bad happened, that's a fact and you still have to deal with it. Right. So you do get what you focus on. And that's what positive psychology and learned optimism, they've proven that optimists see the world differently. When a bad event happens to an optimist, they see it as temporary and specific. I'm having a bad day. I'm having an unmotivated day, not I'm unmotivated. Right. So where a pessimist would say, oh, I'm an unmotivated person, I can never get ahead. Right. They blanket never, always, universal, where an optimist thinks it's a phase I'm going through. It's temporary and I'll get through it. So what Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania has researched, that optimism can be learned. Right. So we're kind of saying law of focus and we're using more metaphysical terms, but it's actually been proven that people can learn to be more optimistic based on how they label the events.
And that's all it takes is to start relabeling. Like,
it sounds very easy, but over and over and over again, like building a muscle in the gym.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I think the key thing I'm taking out of this conversation is maybe I need a new button because mine says panic.
I love it. Yes. I don't know. I always say to my clients, try it on and you be the judge. Right? Everyone listening, try it on and you be the judge.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talk about that you can have more happiness in your life, and so is that really what it's about? Is that reframing of things, or how do people who maybe just are naturally kind of a downer type of person be more positive and upbeat?
Well, and I think happiness gets a bad rap too, because happiness doesn't mean you're always, grinning and everything's great. It just means like, sometimes I say to my clients, like, let's just be content.
Contentment, yeah.
Content. Can we be satisfied? Right. And, what the studies have shown and what my first book, Happiness is a Habit, is about, it showed that when people spend time mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally doing something for themselves, they just felt better. So mentally, what are you thinking, right? What's your thought process? Physically, are you taking care of your body, moving it, eating right, sleeping? Emotionally, do you have a good relationship with yourself and others? And spiritually, do you believe in something greater than you, whether it be a God, a synagogue, a golf course, a mountain, an ocean, right? So I always tell my clients, you could take a walk in the woods with a loved one and you hit all four. So it's really, we have this happiness, this high, I want to feel that great feeling, but just if you could get yourself to contentment right now, I'm okay. Right now, I'm okay. And then build it from there. I think happy people have better coping skills. So when things do go wrong, they don't drag it into the next day, into the next day, into the next decade kind of thing. And you start to see better results.
Yeah, and kind of joy and framing things. Because as you're talking, it reminded me of like Corrie ten Boom, right? Who is able to find joy and optimism while being in a concentration camp. And man, we think our lives are hard. Like, I mean, can you imagine? And I think that's one of the challenges. I say a lot of our problems, I think, stem from just being in a first world country, right? We have way too much time on our hands. So everything seems like a bigger deal than it actually is. I think there'd be probably less divorce and less stress about parenting, et cetera, if you had to fight for your life every single day, because you'd be more focused on finding food than nitpicking something about your husband. So
so it's Maslow's hierarchy, right? We're self-actualizing now. So I think at the evolvement of the human race right now, it's, we're no longer battling lions, tigers, and bears. Most people are fighting with themselves in their head. It's psychological. So that's to me, the next frontier, because people say, oh, that person's making me crazy. And that person, I'm like, no, if you sat in a room by yourself for 20 minutes, you would make yourself crazy. Right? So at this point of our evolution as a species, it's about managing steering our brains, because we can't, the thoughts are coming and they're coming so fast, but it's knowing, that you have a say. I always say, one of the other things I say is, you're the only one in there. I'm the boss of me. So if thoughts are coming that are beating me up, that are making me feel afraid or nervous, it's like, give me another thought, brain. Brain, help me out here, right? I know you want to protect me, fight and flight, right? Our brains, our fight and flight system is meant to keep us safe. It is not built to keep us happy. But we have a growth and connection system, but we have to turn that on. That system, your fight and flight is on 24/7. Your growth and connection system in your nervous system you have to turn it on. That's your learning system. That's when you say, my heart is racing. I just woke up from a nightmare, but I'm okay. Right? Or this person just sent me an email in all caps, but that doesn't diminish who I am. Right? So it's turning on that growth, taking that pause and turning on your growth and connection system and realizing that we even have one.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Michelle. I would love to hear kind of those 3 things you want to leave top of mind for folks.
Yeah. So, in my work with corporations, I always just tell my leaders, again, I said it earlier, if you want your business to grow 30%, what are you doing to grow the people 30%? Making sure leaders have the propensity to develop other people, and if they want to develop other people, right? So often people take the position because of the money and the title, but don't want the job, right? Of developing humans. A leader is someone who leads. And then lastly, again, I'm a coach and a trainer, so I say invest in training and coaching. And there's that great old joke that says, what if we invest in the people and they leave? And then the other guy says, well, what if we don't invest in them and they stay?
Yeah, the CFO and a CEO conversation. Yeah, I've seen that. Well, Michelle, how can folks get in touch with you or learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you, Jana. My website is www.key2unlock. It's the number 2. So it's KEY, the number 2, UNLOCK.com. If you sign up for my mailing list, you'll get my 5 super habits to recharge your life. And I also do lots of public events, and podcasts are also listed on your podcast. Will be up on my website when it goes public, or Instagram. I'm at Key Performance.
And did you mention you have a book coming out, or is it already out?
Yes. So it's done, but so now it's the logistics of getting it edited and proofread. So I'm hoping by January. And it's all about managing your nervous system, managing your energy and your emotions.
Excellent. Well, we'll be watching out for that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Jen. This was so fun.
And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.